Welcome to the Unreasonable Life Podcast. This is where we get to redefine what's possible and inspire you to create a life that is extraordinary. I'm Dr. Nona, an entrepreneur and author, quantum leap teacher, and founder of Elevate Club and 1 Week a Month Mastermind, a professional life liver, and your guide to living boldly. Every episode, I'll sit down with an incredible guest who has shattered limits, pursued their biggest dreams, and created lives that others have called impossible. Together, we're going to uncover the stories, the strategies, the lessons that will empower you to live your version of that unreasonable dream life. Because the life that you want isn't unreachable. It just happens to be unreasonable. Let's dive in. Well, let's jump into it.
Okay, I'm all yours.
Yeah, thank you for coming over.
Pleasure. Thank you.
I think I want to start with a continuation of actually our last conversation. You and I met at a coffee shop not too long ago.
That's right, we did.
We did. And one of the things that you told me has actually stayed with me, and I've contemplated on it for a while now. I actually brought it up today in a podcast that I was a guest at.
Oh, fantastic. Even better.
So one thing that you said was you were talking about the phases of life, and you gave this example, and I'm probably not going to be the best at explaining it, which is why I brought you on. How when we, as babies, we learn how to crawl. We have these landmarks, right? Mm-hmm. My 5-year-old this morning has a possible wiggly tooth. So that's kind of what happens at 5. Mm-hmm. We learn how to run. We learn how to walk or crawl or any of those things. And then you kind of gave the example of the fact that doesn't really go away. There's different phases that happen in life that are predictable, that are innate and predictable. Can you start by expanding on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I have a vantage point. I can look back over 73 years and being in the high performance world my entire life and only kind of knowing what the champion life is like. That's just where my DNA is and where I've been. You start to see things repeat themselves over time. And I kind of always look at that as an opportunity to learn something about humanity and what you can do to avoid preventable problems and be able to set yourself up to seize best opportunities. And so the observation is that every decade there seems to be a different lens that we look at life through that we can't conceive of as being possible where we are now. Like when I was in junior high school, I was not going to be my dad. Mm-hmm. I was going to be the coolest dad ever. I was going to drive the fastest car.
That's right.
I was going to give him a credit card, when he turned 16 with a car. Yeah. I was going to be the cool dad, right? Mm-hmm. But of course, as I started to get older, I saw that my dad did have some wisdom to it. So I believe that this is biologically hardwired and encoded into us because like teenage years, people don't go to obnoxious school to be a teenager. They just all of a sudden one day get up, an alien species.
Right.
Correct. And so, where did that come from? If it's universal, then how can it be a cultural thing? There has to be a biology behind this. So I've observed that there are very consistent things that if we look at that I've been studying over the last 60 years in my advisory, working with my clients, not as a researcher, but as a clinician, watching things happen as they unfold in real life. Yeah. I can see that there are certain things that are just very highly predictable. Okay. And the advantage of that is that if you know that it's coming, then you can prepare for it so you won't be blindsided by it and be able to carry momentum forward. So that's the observation.
Okay. There. I love that. And do you feel like it's different biological phases that we face as women versus men?
Well, I think there are distinctions, of course. There's hormone differences, there's giving birth, there's all sorts of phenomena like that. But I think that people will make a case for the fact that all of this is culturalized into us and we're a blank slate. I don't believe that that's true if we look at the consistency of cultures. You go to New Guinea and you see the exact same things happening and they have no knowledge outside of their little village, perhaps, True. So I would say that there is some cultural things that we look at, but then there's another level of innateness that's part of this. And to be able to sift through that, I think it's important. Plus, we as individuals, we think that whatever we're exposed to is the truth because we've never been there before. but yet the people that are currently existing, like parents, etc.,
Yeah.
since they've been here, they really know what life is. So we pick up our cues from them about what life really is. And it may not be that. Like my daughter, we adopted from Colombia, her impact of first exposure and story to life was you get beat up and worse, and you get thrown out on the street and you got to lie and cheat and steal for food.
Right.
That was her reality. She didn't realize that was a slice of the pie that she was exposed to. So it's a bit complicated.
Sure.
In that respect. So if we kind of dissect it in those kind of three categories, what's culturalized into us? What do we believe based upon what we see that we choose to elect as being correct, but maybe it's not? And then we have this biologic undercurrent that I think that is there despite those other two things.
Yeah, absolutely. I just love the idea. I mean, I get that it's multi-layered, right? It could go in so many different directions of what you were exposed to, even what your ancestors were exposed to, the consciousness of the world in that moment, or whatever the case is. But I just love the idea of one, the fact that there's this innate that sort of runs us through, or there's some commonality that everybody experiences. Like I'm in my early 40s, and the experiences that I have had as a woman, and the more I get to share about my story and the divorce process and some of the things that I've experienced, the more I have specifically women around the same age that are coming to me and saying, we're experiencing similar things. So
Correct.
Knowing that you're not alone. If you're about to crawl or lose a tooth or go through a certain period of life, like everybody is sort of in some level going through that. And two, and more importantly, you kind of hinted to it, is having someone like you be like, I know what is about to happen.
Yes.
So we can expect this experience and we can make the best out of it, or we can face it with, with known adversity instead of kind of getting blindsided. Absolutely. Yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit. This is obviously the podcast for the Unreasonable Life.
That's pretty juicy, actually.
Pretty juicy. Yes, that's the word I use. And I would love for you to share, I know you are so many things. We were just touching on that right before this podcast. You're an Olympian, you're a consultant, you've done so many things in your life, but what would you say has been the most unreasonable thing that you have done, where either in a decision or in a moment or in your commitment, anything in life where it really went against the grain the most out of all the unreasonable things that you've done?
Well, I think of a couple of things. I mean, being an Olympian, as a kid at 7, I thought it'd be cool to be an Olympian. It kind of called me to it.
Yeah.
And so the odds of becoming an Olympian were 1 out of 360 million.
Wait, one out of 360 million?
Well, yeah, if I was only one of a U.S. citizen, there are 360 million people, well then,
Talk about unreasonable.
Yeah, well, I come from a welfare family too, so it's not exactly like, we had a silver spoon to usher me along here either. But it's like, I never thought about that. I always thought of it as a possibility. I never thought that there was any limitations to it. It just seemed like a reasonable thing to pursue. And
it seemed at the time like it was a reasonable thing to pursue.
No, why not? Because I didn't have any contrast that told me you can't do it.
How old were you? 7. And your parents, your siblings, caretakers, teachers, friends, nobody ever told you couldn't do it?
No, my parents, I sort of thought that parents, they birthed you and then you had to figure it out.
Okay.
Because they never really cultivated anything within me, but they didn't discourage me from anything either. So
gotcha. You were on your own, really.
Yeah. Luckily, I had the self-start gene. I don't need to be motivated for anything.
Yeah.
So that worked in my favor. So it just seemed, well, if you could think of something, well, why can't it be done? I never felt that this was an adversity that I had to roll the rock up the hill to be able to get there. I never thought about it like that.
Oh, that's so cool. So it's almost like, this is obviously a big commitment, and I want to dive into it that you took on at the age of 7, at least mentally, and then of course in other ways, physically training and all the other ways. But and I wonder if part of that also for you or for anybody listening is if they are being faced with the negativity or the impossibility, or that this is unreachable, or that this is not possible, not for you. 1 out of 365 million, you said. Yeah. something like that. Like if the possibility of you getting to your next level for health, your relationship, your life, if that's so unreachable, and especially if you're being faced by the consciousness of the world telling you that it's not ideal for you to do that, what would you tell him? Like, what should we do in that case? I think the
first thing is to recognize and remain in receivership, I call it, to be able to let the ideas surface in your consciousness. So if we give ourselves space to do that, then we can uniquely archive things that occur to us, and you write them down, right? So they're gifted to us, so let's write it down. There's no bias about it. Let's sort of write it down. Then it becomes like a feasibility issue. Like culture may say you can't do this. There's no shortage of people that want to discourage you from doing everything.
Right.
Because, I had that, but it's not from my family. It was from friends and peers and things like that.
Peers, yeah.
Yeah, they slaughtered me, man. Every one of them turned their back on me, at a certain point in time with that.
Regards to wanting to become an Olympian?
Yeah, who do you think you are? Nobody's ever done that in our town. Oh, you're too good for us now. That's why you're spending time away. Isn't this being selfish?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, they slaughtered me. Every one of them turned their back on me, because of that. So.
And you just kept listening, kept saying yes to the vision that you had, or the thought that you'd kind of received, right?
Well, I sort of felt, if you cannot support and endorse someone that has an aspirational quest that's been gifted to them, what sort of a person are you?
That's true.
In my opinion, we should be applauding and encouraging everybody to explore their unique path. So it didn't bother me.
Is that the Jeff version of you now that's looking back and seeing that? What about the version of you, Jeff, who was at the time in, being kind of isolated or feeling separated from the friends
I was connected
even then?
Yeah, but let me also say this, is that, the idea of pursuing the Olympics or my glass career, I show my art in the best galleries in New York City. I've done all sorts of cool stuff, but it's not because of my own initiative trying to prove anything to anybody or to try to create an identity for myself by doing X, Y, Z. It's not that I was bored and needed to do something.
Yeah.
Certain things arise that have a gravity that are inspirational that, in my opinion, deserve an investigation.
Totally.
And when you investigate these things, if it's a green light, then they start to evolve and pull you into the gravity so that there's always enough time and energy to get from A to B, if that's the way that you approach that. So, I can verbalize it now, but I couldn't verbalize it then.
But knew it.
But yeah, innately. I was not intimidated by what they say because I didn't have a resonance with them for saying that, because it just did not feel right to me. I didn't feel shamed. I didn't feel
affected or influenced.
Because it doesn't matter. I wasn't, I wouldn't depend upon them to follow through, with it. So I don't know, maybe that's just the way I'm wired. I don't know.
That's what you just said right now, that you were not dependent on them to make the thing happen. You were not dependent on that. Like, they're not involved in you becoming an Olympian. So why should you listen to that? That's so powerful. Because
there's another really important part of this too, is that when we find ourselves in a situation like that, to me, the most important thing that we could do is stop and pause. And we can intellectually ask our soul, is this really something I am being gifted and called to do?
Totally.
I answer callings. I don't pursue goals.
Yes. I love that.
Because, when a calling shows up, you're being drawn to it. It's calling you to it.
It's drawing you instead of you having to push to make something happen.
Correct. And it's not done through self-will to try to make up for some insufficiency that we need to do to feel better about ourselves, to demonstrate to others that we're capable. If somebody says I can't do it, I'm going to prove I can. I think all those things are really lame. You know, because
I relate to, by the way.
We're playing on their side of the field if we're doing that. So
yeah,
I feel like what's really important is that when we get in these situations where we feel a little bit uncomfortable and we start to doubt ourselves, we take the time to ask ourselves, me, Jeff, let me ask my soul the question. Is this really where the gravity is and what I should be pursuing, and what is my position on this?
Totally.
I actually made a card for my clients. First thing you ask yourself is, what do I think about this?
Yeah.
And so if it's, well, I think that this is reasonable, I'm being called to it, it's not malicious, I'm not trying to prove anything, I'm not hoarding or holding back from anybody.
Yeah.
Then it's like, well, who am I? Well, I'm me, you're you, but what do I think about really what this is.
Yeah.
And so I think there does need to be a process by which we self-audit to make sure that we create our filter and give ourselves a chance to answer our own question. And if we answer our own question and it's green light, well, then that tells us something that we need to proceed forward with this to honor the opportunity or the privilege of being able to be a once-in-a-creation person that can only create what we can create in this dimension that can be part of our legacy, that can affect other people and inspire them to realize that there's another way of looking at this that doesn't rely solely on other people's opinions and the experts, but there's a testimony within us that can help us to decide and adjust as we go.
And I think that is so powerful. At the same time, I find that most people struggle with the sitting still or coming to a moment in which you actually ask yourself the question, do I actually want this? Or what is it that I want? What do I think about this? How do I feel about this? How is this aligned with where I'm headed or what I would like to experience? I think that we forget that oftentimes in the busyness of life. I mean, you go through life, you have children, you have the responsibilities, you have work. A lot of people work a 9 to 5, or if you have your business, whatever the case is, you get to a point, and I personally got to the point in which I realized I had not thought for myself it had been a while in that one particular moment that I'm sharing. It'd been a while since the last time I actually sat and was like, what was it that I wanted to experience? My soul wanted to experience. What was the seed of a experience or desire that was planted in my heart that I can surrender to and become more of who my soul is meant to experience in life? I'd forgotten all of that. I mean, I would go to a restaurant and I would just order what everybody ordered or what seemed like the thing to order. Because it was a steakhouse, you order a steak because it's this way, you do that. And I'd lost that sense of the auditing process. And I didn't even know that I didn't have it until I had a moment where it was like, everything that I have done in my life it's not working. It looks good on paper, but was I doing it from a place of ego? Was I trying to prove things? Was I trying to get more to be worthy of? And all of that. Really, in that moment, I made a decision to prioritize that auditing. I didn't call it that, but really sitting down with the small decisions and being like, what is it that I want to experience in this moment? And saying no when I really meant no, and saying yes when I really meant yes. And, or taking a minute to make a decision instead of feeling like you have to satisfy everybody
or be
around
reflexive
you.
To everything,
Or be
to
reflexive.
be able to keep the peace, and et cetera. So the idea of pause is really important. We need to give ourselves a chance to see what we really think about it, because in my opinion, we can't really deem emotions or intellect to be unbiased.
Right.
I think they're heavily biased by our desire
Biology,
to fit in and not be rejected, and to be part of the group, and our uncertainty, and the experts are right. And, because I got a C in baseball in college, which I did, therefore I'm not capable of making my own decisions. Have to bring in the committee, all these things that sort of whirl around. And I found that if you really take the time to pause, and it doesn't take a huge investment, it's just, if you just stop and say, well, what do I think about this?
Yeah.
And you really give yourself a chance to listen to what you're telling yourself consciously.
Yeah.
Then it's a much more accurate barometer for us, and we can count on it as being true, not something that can't get us to where we'd like to go, but it may actually take us to someplace better than we thought, because we're not obligating ourselves to follow a set of protocols, but we're really inquiring of ourselves about what we think. And by the way, I didn't think about the idea of self-audit until minutes ago when I told you that. So
okay.
I just made it up. We went as well. So
we were meant to talk about that. But I think it's so powerful. And you're right. It's not so much about making a decision of whether this is going to take me to that place, but is it authentically the truth that is mine? Or is it, what do I really think about that? Because then otherwise you are going from a place of ego, right? Like, is this serving me?
It's actually fear is what it is.
Or fear, right?
Yeah.
Or fear, yeah. But it's, it is so hard with this, having a moment of stillness. It's so hard, and it's becoming harder and harder for people to experience that. I mean, with social media and everything else.
I think, social media in our phones, I understand why they're so addictive, because we think that this holds the key to my life salvation.
Yeah.
Is by hearing something there that's going to give me the cue.
Yeah.
And I cannot not answer everything, because that one thing that I don't answer may be the key that I need that's going to take me to the utopia, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's garbage. It's self-revealed. Yeah, let me say this. It's a human characteristic to go in that direction, because we are sort of bi-directional in our decision making.
Yeah.
We either come at it from a survival, self-preservation perspective, which most people do, because that's our basic fundamental biology is survival. And it's hard to come from the kind of other place of that's aspirational. Actually, our highest instinct is seeking. I don't know if you knew that, but it's not procreation. It's not shelter. It's seeking.
Seeking what specifically?
Well, that's a question that needs to be answered. But we could say that in a contemporary sense, we could say, well, tell me what do you mean we're hardwired to seek? Because it's a biologic hardwiring.
Interesting.
Well, to me, like if we say Maslow, he had a hierarchy of what? Well, that's self-realization. So we're born to seek things to understand and create things of significance, because I always reference this is that there's only one of you in all of creation.
Right.
There's only one of me.
Yeah.
Nobody can do what we do for our contribution to humanity.
Yes.
That does matter. And it does live on, because everything that we do impacts not just future, us, but
past,
everybody
everything
that we're around. But then there's a kind of a legacy statement about what we did with our time and our talent.
Yeah.
That represent what we did with our time and talent on this path through this dimension. So it's a massive contribution to people, like this is how you do it, or like my dad, artistic genius that died homeless from alcoholism, like don't be me,
right?
So I feel like the implications and value of what we bring can't be it's always underestimated, because how could I be giving anything of value to humanity, because I'm me,
right?
With all my frailties. But that's not it. It's like what we're uniquely gifted to do, whether that's micro or macro. We don't need to influence 1 billion people directly, but we can be a support person that allows that to happen. So we're in alignment, so we can have tranquility of being, and we can walk through life. And when we walk off the stage, we know that there's nothing more that could have been done.
Yeah.
And to me, from my vantage point at my age, that's really important.
Yeah, I love that, and I relate to that, because for where I stand in this moment, there was a period of time where I felt like I was doing a lot of the pushing, and what in both in my career and my personal life, trying to make the things happen. And I felt, truly, I felt not enough. Like I felt like my life didn't mean anything unless I was going to make a dent in the universe. And at the time, it meant different things to make a dent in the universe. And this switch really happened for me, where I experienced, I heard this quote that I kind of, as you were describing, as we're having this conversation, it really came to me, which is, allow your life to be your message. Allow your life to be message. So it really, that quote, if I went deeper on understanding what did that mean, and I forget, it might be Rumi, I don't know who that quote is, but it made me go from a space of, it is my job and my responsibility to help, to create change, to make a dent in the universe. I literally would write that in my journal. I want to make a dent in the universe. I want to have big impact in the world. And to shift from that into, well, what is my life is supposed to be a message to the world. Like you said, with the example with your father, right? If that was his experience, he came here to experience that. What did that mean? What did that life mean to other people or to humanity or to the ripple effect of anybody that was influenced by his experience of life? What was his message to other people, right? And to make that switch, it's a completely different energetic space. One is of ego and of not enoughness and looking to prove, and the other is, wow, well, if I am following my intuition, if I am following a voice from a higher space, from God, whatever the audience is relating to, if I'm following that, and if that is my truth, whether it's unreasonable or reasonable, inside the box, outside the box, somebody agrees with it, somebody doesn't, it really doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter at all.
It doesn't matter at all.
Right.
I just follow that, and the things that will appear that I get to experience are outside of the things that I can even imagine that would happen for me.
Well, yeah, you open yourself up to a whole exponential level of possibility that's not possible within the constraints, the way that most people look at it. It's like, quite honestly, all the plans that we make, it never turns out the way you think that it's going to.
You don't think so?
Well,
Some.
Well, hold on a second here. Let me finish out. Let me say this, is that like our projections into the future estimates about what we believe to be true.
All right, say that again. Our projections about the future.
Yeah.
Say it again. Uh-huh.
Like, let's say we have a goal, right?
Yeah.
And we think that there are steps to the goal. Well, those are estimates on what we believe to be true then, correct? But that's kind of not reality. That's kind of a projected future reality, correct?
Based on what you already know.
Yeah.
In the construct of what you already know. Yeah.
I think that's very safe, and I think that's very reasonable, because you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But in the process of moving, that's where each moment has its own reality that informs us about turn right, turn left, that may take us away from in a different direction than what we thought to be true or reasonable.
Okay.
Or what we thought it to be in the future.
So you're saying the path might look different. What about the outcome?
That may be completely
That may also
different.
be completely different.
100%. Because what I learned in my art career is that if you have an idea, then you no longer become an artist. You're a technician to get to the goal.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, complete technician.
Okay.
But what I realized is that in the act of creation, while you're working with something, possibilities arise in it.
Totally.
That may take you a degree off of what you thought it was. And you follow that path. I realized that, some of the art pieces that I created, people marvel at, I was actually kind of a listener to the process. And in the process of doing, I saw possibilities arising that I didn't give myself, but I could recognize them and take action on it.
Okay.
That led to an outcome that was exponentially better than I could ever have possibly conceived of. Okay. And so, again, I think targets are important because our brain needs something to look at that needs to be aspirational. And also, if you have a team with you, you have to kind of give them a target so they stay in the game. But yet the reality is that it may end up being something completely different. Because generally life doesn't turn out the way you think that it's going to, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Or if it does, then it's probably a lesser manifestation of what would actually be possible if we're a little bit flexible and we can read terrain and we know how to pick our cues because we know our truth speaks to us and we have the courage to step into it. Then that's where exponential happens. All the good stuff in life doesn't happen the way that we think.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
Like I agree.
E equals MC squared. I mean, Einstein didn't set out to discover that.
Yeah,
so it popped up.
So I have two points to make about that one. One is, okay, from a practical perspective, someone listening in, because it seems like the theme of this conversation, a lot of what we're talking about is getting still and giving yourself the moment to actually have that self-audit, right? Have that self-audit to go, what's the direction, like you described, as you're creating that piece of art, having this ability and this attunement so that you can redirect.
To be in receivership.
To be
to
in
have
receivership.
a possibility manifest in your consciousness, then you could decide on it.
Okay, so that's one thing. I want if you have some practical tips, like what should I do today to practice that muscle if I am the average person, the average CEO, entrepreneur, business, mom, whatever, that's super busy doing life? Like how can I practice that muscle of receivership and being in tune so that I can listen? The second, well, maybe we'll come back to the second because this is a big one.
Yeah, I coined the word GOCUS.
Okay.
GOCUS. That's weird. Is that
go and focus?
Well, it's goal focus.
Oh, goal focus. Okay.
Yeah, goal focus. Jim Quick, one of my clients, is the one that said, "Oh yeah, goal focus."
Okay.
So I said that you're currently doing activities of daily living, correct?
Yeah.
And so that would be Kona focus.
Okay.
Correct? Your focus is Kona focus.
Yeah.
But yet our eyeballs have this peripheral space of 270 degrees of visibility.
Yeah.
But we're focusing here to execute the activities of daily living. Well, what about the rest of the space? Because in the rest of the space there, that's where the good ideas are going to show up, or the warnings, don't go there, show up. So in my opinion, we should always hold space as we're going through the day to be in receivership of something popping into your head. And there are times where that's more likely, like in the morning when you're doing your grooming practices to get ready for the day, you get the great ideas. You don't get them at the computer usually. Right. You know, that's procedural iteration of evolution. It's not really the highest creativity.
Yes.
Quite honestly. So there are pauses. You stop at a stoplight, you're standing in line at a bank. So, you know, rather than, you know, look at texting and, you know, going Instagram, you just sort of go back to your consciousness and you ask yourself, well, what's there?
Yeah.
Another thing I think that is extraordinarily important is that when you go to sleep at night, you have a couple things that you need to get done, but you don't know how to do it, and they're missing pieces.
Yeah.
So you do a petition. Like, hey, I don't know exactly what I'm doing here, but so I need something that I can't give myself to move forward. So you kind of put that into your consciousness. So you go to sleep, then that can sort of get worked out.
Yeah.
So first thing in the morning, when you have that first awareness of a new day, don't get up too quick.
Right.
But just lay in bed and check in with your consciousness. And you're probably going to find really good ideas there, because that's the theta wave of the brain that's highest creativity, dreamlike state. And that's where that stuff shows up. But if you get up too fast and start moving, then you're in beta wave, you're in heavy combat mode from moment zero, and you can't go back and get that level of creativity because you're so focused on trying to get stuff done that there's hyper focus, there's no peripheral gaze for the other stuff to show up. So I think that those things that I mentioned hold this Goka space. Yeah. Hit a pause. Maybe go to your conscious awareness to see what's there rather than
being on
look
the
at
phone.
a text or something like that. I think those are things that are real. When you're making dinner or food, you can be doing the food because that's procedural. It's almost like automatic. Well, then you can sort of check in with your consciousness, and ideas may be there. Yeah. And so you're giving yourself a chance to be able to see that.
Yeah. And this is such a simple yet profound idea that you can, and here's what I love about it. You can literally tap into it at almost any moment, unless obviously you're actively engaging your conscious mind. But there's so much time that is spent on the nonsense that it's just filling up our conscious mind, social media, and even like being worried or having anxiety about the ways that things could go. You could literally redirect and create the space, ask for the expansion of an idea that you may have had before going to sleep, waking up in the morning and things like that. Now,
could I mention just one more thing to this? I think this is really important, is that the things that we're talking about are not natural to us. No. They're not natural. Yeah. Our natural way is to be afraid, try to cover all the bases to make sure that nothing goes wrong.
Yeah, so we don't die.
We're preparing for all the catastrophes that could happen. You know, we're worried about everything. Yeah. That's the natural human state. Right. The abnormal human state is to be in reflection. In my experience, anything that's really good in life that advances us is really not natural. It's something that has to be applied to be maintained because it doesn't self-perpetuate.
Totally.
Otherwise, we always lapse back to that fundamental survival us that doesn't serve us well. And I just wanted to mention that you never get to a point where this stuff self-perpetuates. Well, how long do I have to do this for?
Right.
How about the rest of your life?
Lifetime.
You know what I mean? So I just wanted to add that too, that if we feel like we're being pulled away, it's not because you did something wrong. It's your biology is pulling you back into the survival way of being. And that's natural, and we should feel that. I don't know any higher performer on the planet
who
doesn't
never
have
experienced
that. Yeah, like, when I work with you too, I mean, before they go on stage, they're like lunatics.
Yeah.
In a certain sense, there's a lot of pressure and stuff, so that there are no exemptions from the human experience.
Yeah.
I just think that when we talk about the nuances of the reality of it, then we realize that, I do have doubts, but we don't look at that as a weakness. We look at that as a fundamental aspect of humanity.
Right.
It's part of our hardwiring, but our choices to apply certain things by weeding the garden, that we can carry our positive momentum forward to make a difference and live a life of value.
Yeah, absolutely. The point of evolution, right? And I think I use this example all the time with my students is if I ask you when was the last time you self-criticized, you probably tell me an hour ago, unless you have a practice.
That's a long time.
Right? Yeah. Or it could be 2 minutes ago. It could be like this morning. But if I say, when was the last time you actually contemplated on gratitude or the things that you have, who you are as a being that has expanded or added value into the world? And most people are like, I don't, unless they have a ritual in the morning that they've done, then they could say this morning. But okay, beyond that, when was the last time? Well, it was probably yesterday morning. So we are wired for the self-criticism, and part of that, just to kind of give it some meaning, is back in the old caveman days, if you made a mistake, you picked the wrong berry, you died and your entire tribe died. Yeah. So we carry that part of our brain that wants to keep us alive. So the self-criticism is important to go, where did I go wrong? Where am I going to go wrong? Like expecting the worst case scenarios and things like that so that we can survive. But we obviously don't need that anymore. You pick up your berries from Whole Foods nowadays. And so now in the process of evolution is giving some time and space for self-contemplation becomes important, giving some time and space for even for gratitude, for self-love, for the things that are valuable as we move on as in our human journey.
I think it's really hard for people to trust that.
I agree.
I do with my clients, that play a big game. They're never going to get to the finish line, because you never get there. You're always evolving. And as long as I stay a couple steps ahead of them, then we can continue the relationship. But the point I wanted to make here is that people need to titrate and expose themselves to what we're talking about to realize that it can be done. So, for example, in the entrepreneur space, people, they just push until they blow themselves up.
Yeah.
And again, like my clients, I have to sort of train them in a certain way that, look, you don't need to always be there. If you don't have restorative side to this, then life no longer becomes play.
Yeah. Because
your nervous system adapts to being in a condition of ongoing threat and crisis 24 hours a day, and that becomes your new normal. There has to be an exposure to believe that the things that we're talking about are true. I don't think we should turn the world upside down to try to do it all at once, but we should experiment a little bit. So, for example, why don't you take a half a day off on Friday and see if your week collapses?
Yeah. I'm laughing because most entrepreneurs that I work with, it's the first response is a panic attack.
It is.
What do you mean I'm going to take Friday half the day off?
I can't do that.
So,
okay, well, let's take an hour off.
Right.
Can you take an hour off? Well, I do this all the time. So what'd you learn? Well, it didn't kill you, did it? No.
Right.
And so now people can be at a discretionary point where they have a safety net of experience where they can trust the fact that if you're not there 24 hours a day, pausing to get the better ideas and rejuvenating self so you have the energy to execute on the good things that show up, which is a necessity, your life isn't going to collapse. So just to sort of say, it's appropriate to do this progressively over time, not to trying to take on too much, so that you're proving to yourself that you can actually do this.
Yes, I'm a big fan of that. I have a mastermind called 1 Week a Month Mastermind, where I teach entrepreneurs how to tap into the version of themselves that is able and has made peace with the space that it takes to self-reflect, instead of spending 100% of time on quote unquote working hard or quote unquote hustling to making something happen. And we have 3 non-negotiables in the mastermind that I've designed, and one of them is having thinking hour on weekly basis. Me personally, I do more than an hour a week, aside from like going to the gym. No, I don't mean go to the gym and think, or even when you're driving and think. I mean literally designed sitting there, aside even from my meditation practices, sitting there for an hour or longer, and really just contemplate on the things I want to think about, the things that I'm experiencing in life and what they mean, and just kind of go deeper instead of wider, if that makes sense. So I'm a huge fan of creating space. This is inspiring me to actually even create more space in my own life. Well, how can I create more space on my day-to-day activities as I'm traveling today, or as I sit in the car, or whatever? And it's funny you brought up the entrepreneurs, because that was going to be my second point. Well, how do you get these high-level entrepreneurs and business owners, because that's majority of my audience, how do you get them to go from this goal that they have? It sounds like you obviously you're allowing space for the goal, but I see also the expansion of it. How do you get the entrepreneur to go from this is the goal that I have, versus you go, wait a second, you might not end up there, you might end up somewhere better, because most of us are trained to set that goal, whether it's unreasonable or a smart goal, doesn't matter, and just kind of take the steps and the strategy to make that happen. So how do you help them expand? Yeah,
well, I think, in my world, my clients want the right goal. They don't want the smart goal. It
yes,
could be a smart
absolutely.
goal, could be the wrong goal. So just that's its own conversation, but just wanted to say that.
So let me insert, you may not like this, but I usually say smart goals are typically boring, because those are things you already know how you can.
Object to that? I don't want boring.
I don't know, because I say smart goals are boring because the premise, the sort of, the concept of a smart goal is something you already know how to do.
Because you're rejecting possibility.
And you're also not growing to even get to that goal. What level of evolution do you need to experience before you hit that goal? You already know it. It's measurable. That's
what we said earlier. You become a technician.
You become a technician.
Technician is boring.
Correct.
Artist is different. It's creativity in the moment that creates expansion. And
beyond. That's
right. What's conceivable. So like whatever your mind, what is that saying? Whatever your mind can conceive, you can create.
You can achieve. Yeah.
Something like this. Like that to me is a low level thing, because the mind does not have the capacity to go to the bigness. It's not possible.
Oh, absolutely.
So another great idea, but it doesn't work if we're talking about the extraordinary life. So the idea of entrepreneur going into this intense place of vulnerability, like I'm going to die. If I go there and I give up time, everything is going to collapse if I'm not there.
Yeah.
Well, first thing is, just between you and me, usually when the boss goes away, people are relieved because they can get their work done.
Yeah. Oh, I've seen it.
Because the boss isn't always there, perseverating over micromanagement. It's like, God, I'm glad he's out of here, man.
Well, let me insert a little experience of my own. I was on maternity, and at the time I had a practice in Newport Beach. I had a pediatric practice, and my practice did I had an associate run practice. And even though before I thought it was like, oh my gosh, it's a well-oiled machine, I only show up at the team meetings. This is amazing. But wait, I was gone for maternity. My numbers were through the roof. Like, they were incredible. Yeah. So I relate to that too.
So with me, this requires a collaboration of people. I do not endorse people trying to do this on their own.
Of course.
If you have a high degree of responsibility and you're a founder, owner of something, it's too risky. It's too risky. It needs to be titrated, because everybody's personal circumstances favors a best first stab at this. And so my job is to determine what the reach is and where do we start on this to go from a life of threat to a life of safety so that we can learn to play again in what we do. And so I work with my clients one-on-one, and this is one of the things that we work on, of the many things that we work on in our conversations about, their become, see, I'm a futurist. I know their future, they don't. And I know how to get there.
Navigate them.
And get to the bigger, better that's yet to reveal itself, So I would just suggest that, if you play a big game, but you're going to blow and you just don't know when and how bad it's going to be, it's really important to have a collaborator that you trust that can guide you through this and decide, where do we start on the journey of being able to take a belief in a story that we're telling ourselves that if I'm not here, everything's going to collapse.
Yeah.
How do we adjust that into a reality to get the assurance that this won't collapse? And it's a little bit, a piece at a time,
right,
to gain the confidence to do that. So I just don't think one should undertake that by themselves, because it may be an overreach.
Oh yeah.
An underreach, and it's not because they can't get there. It was just too much too soon. And it's not actually like an academic
process
timetable that you follow that was scripted. You have to kind of read the terrain and know what to do based upon the totality of a person's life, both personally and professionally, which I do at that time. Is I'm just not a business coach. I'm just not a life coach, whatever that is. I'm something else. I don't know what it is. Nobody knows what to call me. Yeah. But that's sort of what we do with that. But that's the only way you can do this. And like I have, my CEOs that, they're taking a couple of 3-week vacations a year. They come back, everything's running smoothly, but they're now confident because they've learned the skill of this. It's contrarian to what our human nature wants to tell us.
Yes. And that's why I love this conversation with you, because it is the contrarian word, the unreasonable, the outside the box idea. So
to me, this is normal.
This is not to me too. I'm just trying to get people to expand beyond the box that they were fitted, because I used to be in that box and it looked successful. Actually, it looked great. I had a great life inside of the box, but there's nothing that will compare when you step outside of it, it gets so juicy. So this conversation has been so powerful. We could go on for another couple hours. I know. We got to wrap up. But it's so good. We might have to do another conversation. I know. When I started this podcast, not when I started it, because I started during the pandemic, but more recently, I made a decision that I would only bring people on the podcast that I just wanted to sit down and talk for hours, except I would just capture it on a podcast.
It's a great idea.
So, and I would say no to, don't care who the guest is and how many followers or what they look like and what they feel like. More like, who can I learn from? Who can I go deeper, not wider? Who can I engage with? And I know you and I had a conversation over coffee. I think we talked for like at least a couple of hours. I didn't keep track. It was, it did. It did. Just like today. I think I don't even know how long it's been, but, anyways, so thank you so much and I know this conversation's been really valuable. Is there a specific place that our audience should go to connect with you?
Yeah, I would suggest my website. Yeah. Because the website, it actually, I did a gallery of my artwork.
Oh, so
they can go there and they can see my artwork as well.
We'll put your website in the show notes.
That would be great. Yeah.
Yes.
It's www.drjeffspencer.com.
Okay.
drjeffspencer.com. Check it out. It's an unconventional website because I don't have billboards about where I've been seen and what I've done and my trophy room and all that sort of stuff. Aww. It's really kind of a gritty experience that I'm very proud of because I got a huge artistic side to me. So check it out and let me know what you think about it. And there's always a way to get in touch with me there. If you're interested, you could just follow the prompts and we'll have a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll put Jeff's information and the link in the show notes. So I'm personally interested in taking a look at your website, the way you're describing it, and
I'm really happy with it.
Yeah, it sounds like
it's like a work of art to me.
Yeah,
and I'm really happy with it. Fought hard for it, to really make it work, and we'll see. So thank you.
Well, knowing that you're an intentional man, I'm looking forward to seeing anything that you create. So, website's just the beginning. Get in touch with Jeff. Thank you so much. We might have another conversation if you're willing to come over.
Whatever, man. Just give the nod and I'm here.
Yeah, next time I'll have coffee ready for you.
Okay, I'll ride my bike here and be in cycling clothing.
Perfect. Even better. They're used to you anyways now. Right. You don't have to be dressed up.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. And as always, connect with me, connect with Jeff, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Unreasonable Life Podcast. I hope that today's episode has inspired you to dream bigger, act bolder, and step into your own version of an unreasonable dream life. If you loved what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's ready to take their next bold leap. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and connect with you. You can follow me on Instagram and share your biggest takeaways from today's episode. And remember, the life that you want isn't unreachable. It's just unreasonable. Until next time, keep challenging the status quo, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Unreasonable Life Podcast.